welcome to this edition of Trader Talk TV. Today we're talking to Ben from Alkimi. Ben,
Thank you for having me. I'm very well, thank you. Very well.
You're very welcome to our office. Today we're going to talk about the evolution of infrastructure and ad tech. There is a lot of problems in the space right now. Take rates are going off the scales. And we want to talk about sort of the evolution of that over the next decade, because there's going to be lots of interesting technologies coming up, and Alkimi are working on some very interesting stuff. But before we talk about the Alkimi technology, I want to talk about this bloated middle. Because we hear this about the ad tech tax on it, and it grates the publishers, it grates the buyers, and it's a big problem in our space. I mean, look at Google, for instance. Google are controlling buy side and sell side and taking between 30 and 40% margin depending on who you believe.
Yeah.
So let's just talk about why that's happening, because you've got good insight into this, having worked in the space for a long time. So before we do that, let's talk about yourself and a little bit about Alkimi. So you're the CEO of Alkimi.
I'm CEO of Alkimi. There's myself and two other co-founders, so Adam Chorley and Neil Bruce. We basically had this idea for a decentralized ad exchange. There's a lot of move to decentralization at the moment, primarily in the finance industry. So decentralized finance has been huge, and it's this kind of move away from centralized banking and trustless peer-to-peer lending. So we've applied the best of decentralized finance to the centralized ad ecosystem.
Brilliant, and we'll go into that in a couple of minutes. But before we do that, let's talk about this bloated middle, right?
Yeah.
Huge problem for publishers, particularly.
Middle, yeah.
Who are quite angry, most of them, every month about not getting enough money, which is fair enough.
Let's just call that an exchange.
Yeah.
And this, I guess, largely has been one of the best and worst things to happen. Like, it meant that buyers could sell to considerably more buyers than they could, but that had a number of implications. There was more intermediaries that were selling, and just more hops then were required to get the information required to who you needed to get to. So, like, if you kind of go back towards like an advertiser here, and then you have like a DSP.
Yeah. One hop.
Which is then kind of hooking up via endpoints, probably pre-bid or similar to the exchange itself. So when a publisher on the other side, or a website, has an ad server, and then you have your kind of pre-bid integrations, whether that's server or client side, so client side, server to server, then kind of surfacing each bid request to the exchange itself, where the buyers then coming to say, okay, that matches my cookie, that matches my geo, that matches my device ID, whatever it is. They then bid, kind of have this bid go back through to the publisher's ad server, it's loaded onto the page, the ad server picks the highest bid, and then you kind of get your creative serving here on the publisher's website. Yeah. So that's an amazing bit of kit. It's done very well. I think the issue that we've run into is just the number of hops required to actually fulfill this transaction. It's largely down to the object model for an impression, right? So that ad unit there is actually made up of a number of different bits of information. So you have, any one time you start with the impression, which might then be made up of a user, channel, regulation, and then the device, let's say. So, device, user, regs, say format. So you're looking at a minimum of 4 hops there, but then in format it might be a video or native with a cookie that's part of a PMP deal with GDPR applied on a website. So already you've got your 4 hops, which has become 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's where this starts to become quite difficult. I mean,
so are these pinging different servers then for this information? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, they're all packaged together as different objects. So this will go off. So all of this is then packaged up and sent as part of this
chain.
Exactly that. So this comes in here, and this is used by HTTP post, so rather than HTTP get, because of the payload required. There could be quite a lot of information.
Right.
And this is where you start to see largely this causes discrepancies, because this might be provided by, I don't know, a rich media provider.
Yeah.
And then this is just kind of regulation from the government.
Yeah.
The user then could be a device ID that's stored on a server.
Yeah.
On the publisher here.
So what you're saying is that in this scenario, you've got quite a lot of calls to different servers, right? And
Exactly.
then that just is increasing the cost of the infrastructure. And this is one of the reasons that you said that, this is the reason there is a 30 to whatever percent take rate, is that there is so much cloud infrastructure being used here, and the cost starts racking up. So with all this bloat in the middle means that your cost is going up all the time.
Yeah, because I mean, like it's the cost of running a business, right?
Yeah.
That data has to be stored somewhere, sorted and shared, and that's expensive, right? That costs a lot in terms of cloud infrastructure services. Like if you speak to any demand side platform right now, an issue they'll have is scaling their queries per second, right? Because of all this information that has to go, and for it to be an efficient way of doing it, you can't just kind of use cloud rack space ad infinitum because you go yourself out of business, right? Like it doesn't shake out. So I don't believe that this ad tech tax is often as nefarious as it's made out, because it's just the cost of running a business.
It's the economic realities that this is baked into the cost of running a business.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So there has to be an easier way to do this. So let's talk about your approach to this, because you're looking at this from a whole new way in terms of how you look at infrastructures in our space.
Exactly right. So like if we keep virtually everything the same, because I think if you want to get people to do stuff differently, you can't expect them to change all their behaviour in one time, right?
100%.
So like, it has to be interoperable.
It's often like not possible for a lot of publishers to kind of like flip their tech out for another piece of tech, because nobody gets sacked for buying Google, as I said before.
Exactly right.
A bit like the old adage about not being sacked for buying IBM.
So this is Alkimi Exchange, which we've affectionately dubbed Alex. Saving our word counts on tweets.
Nice.
And this is just a totally different way to kind of envision the way that the bandwidth you require to fulfill that object model.
Yeah.
So we have Alkimi Exchange here that's kind of slotted into the existing system with pre-built adapters on either end. The difference with Alkimi Exchange is that kind of 8 object impression model just becomes one block. So within this block you have kind of the impression, you have the data, you have the regulations, and the format, so maybe native. All passed by one block, rather than there being 8 hops. So you've immediately reduced this number from 8 to 1, which then obviously has a serious implication in the cost of hosting that.
Let's talk about that, because you're compressing a lot of the information path and the need to ping other servers for that information, and having it one block means that you can decrease the cost of infrastructure down. Now, what knock-on effect do you think that will have for publishers? And your obviously objective is to take rates that are 15 to 30% and bring it down to single digits. Is that what you're intending to do here? And
exactly
how,
right. Yeah.
How do you do that?
So at the moment in the old world, this is probably 15%, right?
Yeah.
On both sides.
Absolutely. Maybe even more.
And some, which we don't know what is that.
Yeah.
Right? What we're saying is this becomes 1.5% on both sides.
Yeah.
Because of the reduction in costs that we're able to see by taking those 8 blocks in the impression model and putting it into one.
Right.
And this, because it's a block, means we can put it to a distributed ledger technology, which is then an immutable record of data.
Yeah.
So
it can't
once it's on, it's on. You cannot change it.
Yeah.
It's completely transparent.
Yeah.
So you know who did what where, who took what fee at what point, and this happens instantly.
So you can query it when you want to query it.
Exactly. So when you set your campaign live, you can go away, make a coffee, and you might then see 10,000 ad impressions.
Now we will go into the sausage within the sausage meat within the sausage at some stage, if that's a good metaphor to use. But we'll go into detail around that in follow-on trader talks. But I want to talk about how this slots in. Right, this is really important, because I think the problem with it, sort of new technology like this, because it is new, but you're applying it from a well-trodden area into ad tech. But the problem often with this technology is that it's difficult to integrate. Publishers have to make a big effort.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to do that. So talk to us about the integration part and how that works. So let's just say I'm CNN or the Guardian, or all the publishers that would be interested. How would I slot that into my current ecosystem?
So I think the key to trying to change anyone's behaviour is not changing too much. So we're huge fans of pre-bid and OpenRTB.
Yeah.
Right? At the moment, OpenRTB is the data schema whereby all ads are traded.
Yeah.
Like 99.9% of digital ads are using OpenRTB. It's an effective way of trading, and the best way for that to be hooked up to a publisher on either side has largely been through pre-bid. So we've made our solution compatible with both. Like we've used the analogy of like OpenRTB was the great plan for a house, and people have like extended off of it with stilts holding up the top bedroom and a few extra windows on the other side, and it's looking a bit rickety at the moment.
So you're based, the concrete man comes in with like, your concrete mix and just fills it up.
Exactly, yeah, and just like use that OpenRTB plan, but just find infrastructure that's able to support it for the next 10 years, because it's creaking at the seams right now. Like, people haven't been told how their data's been using, that's got a bit of a backlash from users, and then technically internally, like, the cookie was never meant for all this amazing kind of technology we built on top of it. It was just to remember a sign-in when you got to a website, or on your favourite e-commerce site, go back to the jumper you were looking at.
Yeah.
You know, it's been really taken on to the nth degree, and I think the best way of like representing what that looks like is with this diagram. Really bored. So at the moment you have HTTP as the underlying kind of protocol that attaches databases together. You then have quite a fat application layer, because HTTP is quite limited. So within here you have like shared CSS, single sign-ons, ad technology, JavaScripts. You have social plugins that are seeing a lot of the functionality that we see on the web today that make it a good experience. The problem you've got is, because this is such a skinny protocol, this adds a lot of just loading time on a page. You'll see it if you ever kind of look at developer tools on Chrome. All of these cookies that ping off in the background, your page loads slowly, and you're like, wow, I thought I was reading an article, and now an ad's popped up in the middle of it, like, where was I? So what we're saying is, you still have the same internet protocol, HTTP, but the Alkimi exchange is a much fatter protocol, and is able to replicate a lot of this third-party functionality within the way that the servers talk to each other. So all of a sudden, this comes into here, this comes into here, this comes into here as part of this protocol layer. So in the Alkimi world, your applications are Web3 wallets, payment rails, so like Visa debit cards maybe, and then also any kind of decentralized ID solution that may exist in the future. There's a lot of cool companies doing that now. And by doing this, you're able to basically speed up the web page. I mean, the top 100 URLs account for 30% of all JavaScript loading time. If they were to sort out the amount of JavaScript they were loading, the entire internet would see a performance increase of 3 to 4% across the entire world, which is kind of obscene. That if you think about the amount of people, the amount of data, to see that kind of improvement just from the top 100
So the ad experience would improve as well.
Exactly
and
that.
You're taking a load off page, you're also giving more money to publishers.
Yeah.
And this is the you want to ease your way in with the current infrastructure, and you can use pre-bid to do that.
Exactly right. Yeah. Long story short. Yeah.
Okay.
We can slot into the existing systems. That's one of the beauties of the infrastructure that we're using, is it's totally interoperable with existing data schemas. Once you create it and it exists in the Alkimi exchange, it can then work with anything that isn't on the Alkimi exchange.
So where are you currently with your rollout then? What's the current state of play?
So we are probably about a month away from the MVP launching, which will be largely supply first. There's a lot of stuff we're looking forward to sharing with publishers, because it's quite exciting what we're able to offer because of the way that the economic model works within the exchange itself. It's very different to what we've seen at the moment. It's too much detail. It's a generative economic model rather than an extricative economic model, which is what we see at the moment, where Google, Facebook, Amazon sit on the top, take out most of the pie, and then leave you one slice. Whereas at the moment,
crumbs.
Yeah, and you don't have to bring anything. Whereas what we're saying is, like, you bring some of the ingredients to make a cake, and then you share that cake you make, because someone else might have an egg, or someone else might have the sugar that you need to have a cake that everyone can then eat. It's like the idea of like a rising tide that raises all ships, rather than
the one or two companies taking
exactly.
Well, we're all for that. Ad tech is all about, independent ad tech wants to take as much money away from GAFA as we can.
Yeah.
Ben, thanks for coming to the office today, and we will have more on this next couple of months as the guys roll out their product. And it is interesting to apply this sort of new technology to our current ecosystem and helping publishers make more money, which is what we all want to do.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
I think like largely what we want to do is take the kind of innovation away from the middle
yeah,
and put it out towards the edges, which is exactly how financial markets work. You know?
Absolutely. Ben, thanks for your time. Thanks
Pleasure.
for coming
Thank you very much for having me.
And that was Trader Talk TV, and we'll see you next time.